Russian missiles reportedly striking a farm in Poland near the Ukrainian border, killing 2 people. That's according to the Associated Press. Our Rick Newman has been following this story. And Rick, I think the big question here is where this puts the U.S. and NATO and what this means for the escalation of the conflict with Ukraine and
So
Russia.
I think the first question is, what does Russia have to say about this? Do they come out and say this was a mistake? They could go as far as apologizing. That would probably be a smart thing to do. They may not do that, and we don't know if it was a mistake or if it was a deliberate attack meant to look like a mistake. So they could be Russia. So it could very well be a mistake. I mean, missiles do go off course from time to time. Russia has worse quality problems with its weaponry than the United States has. So that's plausible. It's also plausible that they're testing to see what NATO might actually do. So in Poland and in NATO and in Washington, I'm sure there are going to be a lot of discussions along the lines of, first of all, was this deliberate? How do we respond if we think it was deliberate? If it was an accident, how do we respond if we think it was an accident? And there is actually a lot that NATO could do. There's a lot of equipment, military equipment, NATO has declined to give Ukraine so far because they thought it would be too provocative. And this could be a way to say, okay, you know what? We don't really care whether it's deliberate or not. We're sick of this, and we're going to maybe give Ukraine the next level of equipment, such as longer range missiles or something like that.
Of all the mystifying Putin moves, bringing the United States and NATO into this battle would be baffling, and apologizing is certainly not a part of his playbook. Right. Markets plummeted initially on this news. Why?
If NATO gets involved in this war, it's a totally different animal. And it's important to keep in mind that parallel to the military war in Ukraine, there is an energy war happening right now. Now, this energy war has escalated and then fallen back, escalated and fallen back. There's more that Russia could do and Putin could do in this energy war. We're going to enter a new phase in this energy war in early December. That is when this European ban on purchases of Russian petroleum products goes into effect. It's also around that same time that the U.S. price cap on Russian oil is going to go into effect. Vladimir Putin is not going to just accept the United States and the West telling the rest of the world to pay less for Russian oil. He's going to respond in some way. We don't know what that is yet. So this has fallen out of the this energy war has fallen out of the headlines because markets have stabilized somewhat. They could become unstable very fast. And that is certainly one thing that markets are worried about.
And we know that an accidental war is something one of our guests was previously talking about. Shahzad Kazi was talking about China and Taiwan, the fear of an accidental war, perhaps if this does end up being an accident. We're seeing Russian state media denying that the missile is even theirs. And then also, of course, on the sidelines of the G20, you had China objecting to calling the Russian invasion of Ukraine a war. What does this do in terms of the geopolitical stew as this could potentially escalate?
I like your metaphor, Rochelle, geopolitical stew. It is that, and it's kind of a distasteful stew, I guess you could add, a miasma almost. There is a lot of communication happening between the countries you just mentioned. The United States is still talking to Russia at senior government levels. The CIA director, William Burns, has been talking to senior Russian officials in Turkey. As you point out, there's been a lot of discussion about this between the United States and China. That's all good. All of that is good because you get greater chances of a mistake and a mistaken escalation if people are not talking to each other and you start to interpret signals in the worst possible way. That has happened before in military standoffs, and it's encouraging that we are having some level of discussion happening on the sidelines. But I think this is a step that we have not seen yet, which is Russian weaponry landing on a NATO member. That's Poland. And it's not as if all of NATO is going to declare war on Russia, but it's also probably true that NATO cannot just say, brush it aside and say, we're not going to worry about it. There probably does need to be some kind of NATO response because Putin does test people in exactly this way. He conducts what's known as hybrid warfare. We had explosions in the pipelines. There's 2 natural gas pipelines that go into Germany just outside of NATO countries' waters. So that was probably calculated. And Putin does do things like this to see, are you going to respond? Are you going to take the bait? Or are you going to do nothing? In which case, he might try to see what else he can get away with.
Just want to wrap this up with Sergei Lavrov's official verified Twitter account saying Polish mass media and officials commit deliberate provocation to escalate the situation with their statement. He says Russian hardware has launched no strikes.
So we don't believe, just to be very clear, we don't believe anything Russia says because they lie all the time.
Propaganda all the time.
Right.
Just wanted to put that out there. Our senior columnist, Rick Newman, great to see you, sir.
See you guys.
Excellent perspective.